Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. In this week's video, we're going to be adding a splash of color with some water-based dye, so stick around, see what we get into. To get started, we have to turn a bowl. And so I have this piece of highly figured English sycamore, and this is what I'm going to use. And I like using figured wood for dyed projects because the figure actually gets accentuated by the dyeing, and so it really makes that pop and kind of come to life. And so this piece is going to be awesome. And to get started, we're just going to turn it. So I'll mount a faceplate on it, turn the outside, flip it around, and then start kind of giving it its rough shape, and that will get us to the point where we can start dyeing it. I'm going to dye the rim of this piece, and so the whole underside, all of kind of the rest of that piece is just going to be kind of a standard bowl, but I'll bring you back and we'll start talking once we start adding some color. And so we should probably talk about the newest upgrade to my shop, which is a 3M VersaFlow. With 2020 and coronavirus and safety and lung health all kind of big in the news, I decided that it was probably time to quit putting it off and just save up the money and do the upgrade. The 3M respirator that I wear is great. I love that respirator. It's actually what I use in my little shop, but in this big shop where I'm doing big production work, lots of sanding, lots of fine dust, I really needed to step my game up. And so I upgraded to the VersaFlow. And it's a big expense, there is no doubt about it. a Trend Air Shield, pretty good. I've tried them on, but they're a little bulky on the head and they just don't seal quite as well as one of these industrial units. And although they are super expensive, this unit is outstanding. I can sit here and sand and turn and work, and I never have to worry about it. I'm working in a bubble. And so, I'm able to get my face pretty close to the work, and that chips and sawdust and everything's flying in my face and just bounces right off the shield. And you don't even recognize it. And so it's a much safer way to turn. I still have that face protection, but I also have that lung protection, and it really ensures that it is there. And so this has been a pretty big upgrade for me in the shop. I do look like a spaceman as I'm working, but it does ensure that no matter what, I'll be able to be in the game for a long time and not have to worry about my lung health. And so just a brief overview of my new upgrade, and let's talk about this piece. And so the piece is now shaped and ready to sand. And the inside will get sanded just like any other surface, but this rim is gonna get something special. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sand it to 240, but once we hit 240, then we're gonna raise the grain. I've got an old bottle, Windex bottle, I just got filled with some water, and then what I'm gonna do is spray this down and raise the grain. Once it dries out, then I'll hit with 320, raise the grain again, cut it back, 400, raise the grain again, 600, and 1200. And so what that'll do is that'll ensure that when I go to apply the water-based dye, the grain does not raise, and I have that nice smooth surface without having those fuzzies, because once the dye's in, you really can't sand it. Now, this takes a long time. Letting the wood dry is a process, unless you have a cheat code. And for me, that cheat code is a heat gun. And so what I'm gonna do is, as I'm turning this, I'll get this nice and smooth and sanded, spritz it down, turn on the heat gun, dry it out. And it takes a process that could take a few hours, and it makes it happen almost instantaneously. It is a cheat. You do have to be careful. You don't want the wood to get too hot, but it does allow this process to speed up rather quickly. And so we're gonna sand this edge and this whole inner profile, raising the grain, but then also cutting it back so that when we are ready to go, we can just apply our stain and we'll be set, ready to finish it. Here we have it. Our piece is now ready to dye. We have sanded this and raised the grain in between each grit, and now I have some water-based dye, and we are going to dye this outside ring. There are a few things to keep important here. One of the most important things you need is your bed covering cardboard. I've had this piece since my first lathe. It is filled with finish and dye and all sorts of fun things, but it likes to sit right here, and if there are any drips, it will fall right here instead of staining your bedways. Second are gloves. This is water-based stain. If it gets on your fingers, it will permeate and it will stain your fingers. This is a nice kind of bright red coral color, and so what we're going to do is apply it to this outside surface and on this top rim, being very careful. Again, I don't want to try and get it on the back, and I don't want to get it above this here. If we have to, we can always cut back this line and sand this to kind of clean it up, but the objective is to take this nice and slow, use a little bit of shop rag, and just very carefully stain this outside piece. So with that said, let's get this piece stained up and see what it looks like. And so here it is, our finished bowl. And this is definitely a chunky boy. There's a lot of meat left in this bowl, but that's not an accident. I like leaving a little extra meat on some of my pieces. I like them being a little heftier. Not every piece needs to be light and delicate, especially something like this, which is going to be mainly decorative. It is finished in a food safe finish. You can use this as a daily workhorse, but for most people, this is going to be a centerpiece, maybe with a few pieces of fruit in there. And so it is exactly what I wanted it to be, a nice contrast between the fun, vibrant color of the die and that crisp, clean break to the English sycamore. The figure runs throughout the entire thing, but you get a nice, cool pop of color on a wooden piece that normally wouldn't have it. And so if you're interested in this piece, please check out the website. Pieces like this and this one are listed for sale on the website. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, have a wonderful day, everybody. Got some water-based dye to help bright. I bought a lot of this at. I'm going to like how the dye brings out the figure and kind of accentuates.